Hi there, it's Pete, Mindwiseman's channel, aka Maverick Outdoors, and you can see I'm now underneath my improvised tarp tent. So it's based on a cross between the classic tarp tent, where everything is central and there's equal amounts of tarp either side with the different fixings, and also a pyramid tarp shelter. But I wanted to play around a bit. I'd had an idea at home, and I used a square piece of paper, and I kept folding it into different configurations where I could lay down in it but also enclose it, but also open it up so I got view space around me without having to be in an enclosure like the normal classical tarp tent would normally be. Hence what you saw me putting together just before it got dusky dark, and finished it off actually as it got dark. Temperatures are starting to drop, hence you can see I've got some food here. I've got some pork scratchings, I've got some pizza bites. They're like sort of pizza, pepperoni and cheese wrapped in a sort of a pastry, and also I'm doing a brew, so that'll get some calories in me and warm me up a little bit. But then I've got a special dinner for later on, which is a chicken casserole that I made fresh yesterday, put in a vacuum bag, and I'll either boil it in the back, female owl in the background. So as I say, I'll either boil it in a bag or probably serve it up in the saucepan. I brought a bigger saucepan this time compared to the small pack-away one that I can put my kettle in, which I brought out last weekend, just so that it's easier to actually boil up the water, because obviously the sachets of food are a bit bigger. And I've also got a homemade all-day breakfast, which is underneath my bagged chicken casserole, which has got all these ingredients. And for tomorrow morning, it's cut up egg omelette, beans, bacon and sausage with some extra seasoning. So that's a pretty big portion there, about twice the size of what you normally get in an army ration MRE. So that's fresh, it's not long life, but obviously I made it, say, yesterday, I made it last night, been in the fridge on Friday night, and it's still very cold to the touch, because we're going to get down to anything from 1 degree to maybe -2 tonight. So it's just gone 7 o'clock in the evening. It gets dark now by at least 4:30, 4:45. So that's when I'd sort of was halfway through doing the tarp setup. But the sky is really clear as I sit here, a little bit more togged up than what I was earlier. I would say the sky's really clear, so any warmth that did come through today, we had a bit of sunlight this afternoon, but of course there's no cloud cover to keep that warmth in, so I've really noticed the temperature drop very quickly within the past, I'd say not even 20 minutes to be perfectly honest. So I've got my softy trousers over my NBC camo trousers, but my top layer is my tactical poly cotton shirt. It's sort of a little bit like the SAS smock, which I've got a tan brown one and also a green one, but this is more of a sort of shirt version with just 4 pockets, 2 on the chest, 2 on the waist. But underneath that I've got me a Mandarin Army issue thermal liner, which has got sleeves on, quilted. And underneath that I've got my fleece and t-shirt, so it's going to keep me warm. I've also got for later on when I go to sleep, my final 2 layers will be the extra pair of softy trousers on top of the ones that I'm wearing, so I'm a mobile sleeping bag on legs, and also my softy jacket. But I've acquired a new wool blanket, but more about that later. So the all-in-one homemade tea sachet with the powdered milk, sugar and tea bag, that's brewing now, getting a nice strong flavour. I can smell it and I know it's going to taste really good, because that's really going to warm the cockles of my heart. And then those little pizza bites and pork scratchings, and that's going to be my little snack, and then I'll have my dinner later on. It's forecast to rain the late hours Saturday, early morning hours of Sunday, from maybe about 2-3 o'clock in the morning. Then it's going to hold off apparently, so it's been forecast in the area where I am, and then it's going to kick in late morning, and then a bit of drizzle, and then again pretty sort of mediocre heavy showers later on in the afternoon. So I'm going to see how this tarp fares out in the rain. The tarp took about 10 days to receive. It was off eBay, £15, about $22, $23 US, and it came from China. I liked the oak effect, the oak foliage as you saw with some of the footage earlier on, and I'll give a closer inspection of it during the daylight tomorrow. But the quality of the polyester, it seems sort of a bit fibrous, a bit porous. It's not been PU coated, or it's got no sort of treatment on it, so I did actually spray it with Fabsil. But you know, I'm a little bit suspect of it. I think it will probably leak, and a couple of the rings, I had to put some new ones on, came out. So again, you get, at the end of the day, you get what you pay for. A bit of a gamble. I've had other bits of kit from the Far East that have been really cheap and cheerful, and I've still got them, and they've really been quite sturdy. So you know, it's the luck of the draw, depending on the materials and the items that you do actually acquire. It was mainly the wood oak and foliage effect pattern on it that I really liked. But so I'm going to see how it fares up, and it's going to be a good test considering this is the first time using it, as I only received it about 3 or 4 days ago. And the padded unit I'm sitting on is the wool mat rolled up and put in a dry liner waterproof bag that you put in a Bergen side pouch. So 2 new things to try out, the tarp and the wool blanket, and I thought I'd just share this brief experience with you. Okay, so it's come up to about 10 o'clock at night. I've just put about 2/3 of a litre of water in there, and it's about 3/4 full with the bag of food in it, the chicken casserole. But that was a new roll of bags, so I just want to see how they fare with being heated in the water with food inside. So I'll keep an eye on it, see how it goes, and have a nice hot meal on this quite chilly low temperature night, which is now dropped to about 1 degree. So change of plan. I've actually heated up in the bag, but because there wasn't enough water surrounding it and the bag was actually settling sort of on the base of the pan, it sort of got a bit stuck and welded on, and it burnt just a tiny little hole. Didn't actually burn and shrivel it up, but it's as I sort of pulled the bag out. So anyway, I've emptied it in there and I'll just eat it out of the saucepan. That's going to be really yummy. If it had been at home and it had been a bigger saucepan with more water surrounding the bag, I could have just dunked the bag in vertically instead of trying to lay it flat, and there'd have been less edges and surfaces of the bag touching the inside surface of the saucepan itself. So, but because obviously the saucepan was nearly big enough to take the bag, but obviously not to heat it effectively, hence just making a little bit of a melt hole in the bag for it to leak, so I caught it just in time and put it straight in the saucepan to heat up the rest of it. Well, that went down a treat, that casserole stew. Well, I'm going to have one of me homemade all-in-one. Cup of tea, powdered milk, sugar, tea bags, seen these before. Get the kettle on a boil and have a nice hot drink. And a few little, let's have a look what sweetie things I've got. Ooh, a few chocky bickies, chocolate wafer, a nut bar. Right, let's have a little sweetie dessert with a cup of tea. Right, well, the majority of people like a nice biscuit with a cup of tea, especially in good old Blighty in England. We like to dunk our biscuits in a nice strong sweet cup of tea, or no sugar, choice is down to the individual. But just a quick reference on these. First time I've had these, I got these from supermarket, Asda, not a plug for them, just for these biscuits. I think they're Polish, and sometimes I get the stuff in the Polish aisle. I've got some interesting bits and bobs there as far as like long life food, like certain stews that are in a tin or in a jar, the way that they cook their sausages with beans and cabbage and all that sort of thing, long life food. So I get those sort of items from prep stores. I might actually get a few more of these, but it just looked like a sort of maybe a cream filling in between the biscuit. and then sort of a chocolate flavoured coating, but actually it's like a marshmallow centre, and it seems to taste like orange. But if you like this sort of thing, it's worth getting them. I think only about 50p, and there's about 8 biscuits in there, I think. So they're really great for trail food. So anyway, I thought I'd just share that experience with you. Biscuits with a brew, with a view. Somewhere out there. Very nice, I must say. So if you like this sort of thing, worth considering and getting some. So like the past few wild camps, I've brought 2 kneeling come sit mats. That one I initially used to sit on, but now I'm on the inflatable mat with my folded blanket underneath it, so that's sort of padding and keeping me warm. But then the other one, which is sort of like a concertina, which sort of folds up. The dirty bit's on the inside or the wet bit's on the inside if you have to pack it away quickly, but then as it unfolds. So I've had that as my kneeling mat at the same time as having the green one as a sit mat. As I say before, I was sitting on the woolen mat, sorry, the woolen blanket. But now I've just extended that where you can see the ground is wet and cold. When I put my legs on it, it insulates. Thing is with the cold, when it creeps up on you, you don't really notice it because it's literally creeping up. But when you go, yeah, I can really feel it's a bit cold now, it takes a while to get your body warm again. So it's always good to have little different ideas to improvise so you insulate your body against the ground. Okay, it's coming up to about 1:30 in the morning. I made a slight adjustment on the outside of the tarp, but I'll show you in daylight tomorrow. I put an extra clamp on a front edge. I'll say more about that in daylight. But you'll notice I've got my wool blanket on. I haven't put my second pair of softy trousers over my first pair, so I've got my legs as they were earlier, and I haven't put my softy jacket on either. So I've just got the 4 layers on: the t-shirt, the zipper fleece, the quilted thermal liner, and then this tactical black jacket, shirt, and a thicker hat. And I've drawn the bottom corner of the right hand side of the entrance over, so it just blocks any cold air coming in. So, and I've really noticed the difference within about 15-20 minutes of it actually not feeling cold sort of around my face and around the upper part of the tarp that's just above my head. So that's reduced the coldness. So I've got my woolen blanket over me, and I'm going to see how I get on. And if I wake up during the night and I need the extra couple of layers, either softy jacket, but I'm hoping that I can just do a test run with this new blanket and see how I get on, and see if this replaces not having a softy jacket and trousers. Although I could wear that and not have wear those and not actually have the blanket. But I just want to try this blanket out and see the thermal quality. You'll notice right down at the far end, I was considering that if it does get heavy rain, it could sag at that very bottom bit right at the tip there, and water could collect and then sort of ingress back in. It wouldn't actually get to me, but I don't want it all sodden and wet down there. So I just bridged it up. I lifted up that corner at the end and just bridged it up with a little bit of broken log, and hopefully that will just give all the falls so that the water will go on the boundary edges of the tarp and not actually sort of sink down on it. So those are the couple of adjustments I've made to the tarp to see me through this cold early winter's night. It's ever so still. There's no breeze. It's still a starlit sky. You see all the skeletal frames of the trees silhouetting the view, anything above ground level. So I'm going to settle for the night now, see how I get on, see if I can fend off the rain with this new tarp, and see you in the morning. Good morning, it's now Sunday and it's been raining now for, I would say, quite a lot for the past sort of 3-4 hours. It must have kicked in about sort of 4 o'clock this morning, started to drizzle a bit, and there was a slight heavy downpour. It was just before the rain kicked in. It was about 3:30. I decided to put my softy jacket on and my second pair of softy trousers. I could just feel it a little bit around the sort of top of my thighs and my knees and slightly on my back. So I wasn't freezing cold, but I just thought, well, I've got the 2 layers, extra layers, so I put them on, and I've been very, very comfortable and warm ever since under the woolen blanket. The tarp, waterproof wise, has held up so far under the rain conditions. I don't know how it would have held up if it had a really, really heavy downpour. But on awakening, I did a sort of a hand test, just touching different surfaces. Touched just gently the inner surface of the tarp, and there's no leakages. I was a bit concerned about the seam, where the 2 halves of the tarp were sewn together and it wasn't tape sealed either. So I did put some extra spray of the Fab Seal spray, silicone sealant, waterproofer. So all in all, would be classed a bit of a damp and bleak day, but it's all part of nature. It's all part of it. No such thing as bad weather. Just the wrong kit and the wrong clothing. So I'm going to get the kettle on the boil for an all-in-one homemade sachet 3-in-1 coffee, and also going to heat up my breakfast of bacon, egg, sausage and beans. Okay, so while there's reasonable daylight and the rain has virtually held off, it's just very, very light. I think if anything it's a slight breeze that's blowing the rain droplets from the trees and branches, so there's nothing really heavy. So while it's these conditions, I'll show you some of the slight final adjustments I made before I settled last night. As you can see, where this corner was rolled up along here and went diagonal, I unrolled it and fastened it there, so it gave me more head width at the end. And then this clamp here pulling out to complement the one that was originally done when I first set it up. If you can imagine, this was sort of going down at a slight angle, so I wanted to give myself a little bit more space. So that's clamped there, which, as you can see, brings that little area out a little bit more, and then fastened to the tree just there. So seeing a much broader space for me to manoeuvre when I swing my legs out to the left and come out, and then just to manoeuvre to get out. But there you can see a little bit more of the fuller space from making those final adjustments. And also it gave it a little bit more of a fall on the outside surface. A fall for the rain to come more effectively, not quite vertical, but less of an angle where it might have been able to sag, and obviously would have given me less space as far as sort of head height and seated height inside. So that really served a purpose. And at my furthest foot end, at that little triangular point where inside I showed you last night, where I just stacked it up a little bit with a small bit of broken log, you can see there has stopped any sag, and where I get definite drainage of the water without it sagging and maybe getting water just collecting on that flat bit where it would have eventually been flat with the weight of the water draining down. So that served its purpose. So I've got water draining, falling off all the surfaces quite effectively. I'll give you some long distance views on how my pitch blended into the area that I'm in. When to use the butane gas stove, there's still about half the gas left in it, but because of the cold, tiny little flame, it would take a month of Sundays to heat up my breakfast. So I always bring for backup, in case there's any technical issues, my Hexamin stove. So that's heating up my homemade breakfast. And previously I used the kettle to boil up the water for my coffee. So get that down my throat, little walkabout, and then I'll strike down camp. Okay, so it's coming up to 5 o'clock. The rain has kicked in again. So I've got my waterproofs on. I've got my rucksack with its waterproof cover, which is obviously the surface of it is leaning against the tree. And I've got the straps facing outwards. So I'm going to put that on in a moment. You can see the rain coming down now. And as always, leave no trace. So if you wouldn't know I've been here, you wouldn't know I have been here. So I'm ready to walk back in the dark and in the rain. So I hope you found this tarp setup of interest, the way that I sort of improvised and adapted it to the uprights, the tree foliage that was around me, and to get the appropriate shape, size and space underneath. So just sharing that improvised tarp tent version of a tarp setup with you. So as always, thanks for watching, really appreciate your interest, and catch you in another video soon. Cheers, take care, keep warm, stay dry.